In 2021, we reviewed the AHSS FX-9. It was a mouthful to say. Rather, I guess you could say simple, classic-looking gun on the outside, but very impressive shooting impressions. This thing was awesome to shoot. Fast forward to the spring of 2024, and at the IWA Classic Show in Nuremberg, Germany, we got to meet with AHSS and see some of their new stuff they had coming. Now at the end of 2024, it's finally here in the US. The FX-9 RP tabletop review and field strip coming up next on GBGuns. This case is probably one of the sturdiest, most heavy-duty cases that I've seen that isn't an actual true hard case, I guess you could say, but it does have eyelets in there for running locks through it. I have it already open because these levers are stiff and tight, and the position that I have to film this in, I wouldn't be able to do that. So we open up our box, and what's in the box? We have a punch tool for driving out the back strap, because this does have 3 interchangeable back straps, a bore mop, bore brush, as well as a brass brush, all standard and nice things to have along. We've got our manual, we have a holster, there's our straps, 2 magazines. This uses CZ75 pattern magazines, which is awesome because those are readily available and very affordable, easy to find, and an optics plate, because that's right, this thing is now optics ready. I'm sure someone's waiting to say something about green. Green was my choice. These are available in other colors, but I live in the Pacific Northwest, so I like the green. Now the holster, and you notice it's off of its backer here, got the wheel with the teeth set up. That's because these allow you to adjust the cant and angle that you want to run this as. It is Serpa style with the push button thing, which at first was kind of a concern to me, because I'm sure, as many of you are aware, there is a risk with this that when you draw, it's putting your finger right at the trigger. However, this striker-fired gun has a manual safety, so you can run it that way. If you're afraid of safeties and want to run a different style holster, you've probably read my article. This holster will work. If not, head on over to my website and you can learn more about that holster. Let's get this stuff out of the way, do some quick notes from the manual, and then we'll take a look at the gun. I look at manuals for 2 reasons. One, it shows you how much the company wants you to understand the firearm. The better written the manual is, the more it shows they actually care about you and they're not just selling you something. The other reason is, as I flip through and show disassembly, I'm showing the manual reviewer at YouTube that what I'm doing is not disassembling or building a gun or gunsmithing. It is basic end user level stuff. The manual uses renderings, which are nice. It allows the highlighting of specific points of interest and is actually quite detailed. You can tell that the team behind this pistol is definitely very technical, because that's how things are written in here. I did not see any concerns or points about ammunition. There's more of an actual image, but in full color. Overall, it's a very nicely done manual that explains a lot of things and even alludes to some other options that, as far as I know, currently aren't on the US market, such as ported barrels and threaded barrels. With that out of the way, we can finally take a look at the gun. Now this, of course, is a different model than the 2021 version that I have here, but I wanted to point out a few. There are a lot of similarities, but there are also a few slight changes, such as the serrations on the slide. In this newer model, they've gone with the broader, somewhat deeper, staggered way, stepped, I guess you could say, serrations versus the straight cut. This grips better. We also have, of course, the windowed slide with the holes cut in it, which makes the difference, and then you notice that we are now optics cut. The sights, these iron sights were sights that we actually really liked. Those dots were very effective. However, the sight cut themselves has been changed to Glock pattern, and somewhat ironically, they stuck with the Glock U and dot, which not my favorite, but since these are Glock pattern sights, it's now much easier to get aftermarket sights and swap those out. I mean, pretty much everyone who makes sights makes Glock pattern sights. Other than that, things feel pretty much the same, but there's of course going to be some weight difference between these 2 slides. Now I know some folks like to mock them and call them speed holes and things like that, but that weight reduction actually has an impact on felt recoil. That's because, and I've demonstrated this, I don't know how many hundreds of times with slow motion footage, when the round detonates, when you pull the trigger and it fires, that's not the biggest source of recoil. The biggest source of recoil is when the slide makes the abrupt stop at the end and the abrupt stop forward. So the more mass that slide has, the more energy it's got to impart in your hand, and the more it's going to want to rock the gun. So a lighter slide results in softer recoil sensation. Additionally, when you go to put an optic on, man, that plate is flush fitting, isn't it? It almost looks like it's not an optics ready gun until you see that there's a plate. That's adding an ounce or two, depending on the optic, to your slide mass. So removing some from somewhere else helps keep the calibration correct for your recoil assembly, etc. What are the weight differences? We'll be finding out, but I want to point out also the snout of the gun, or the snout of the slide, is cut a little bit differently, and additionally, to allow access to that Glock pattern sight, they had to make a hole straight through. So we've got even more steel reduced there from the nose of the gun, and that nose weight, when it's reciprocating, is the stuff that can really cause some dips. So, and I haven't done this yet, I'm really curious. 12.7 ounces on the old slide, and the new one, 12.1 ounces. So not a huge savings, 0.6 of an ounce, which, as I recall, and correct me if I'm wrong, is really close to the RMSC footprint optics, which is what we've got here. Now this is a steel cover plate. The mounting plate that is included in the box is polymer. I know some folks will take concern with that. I understand that. I just got to say, watch your torque specs and don't over tighten, and then you shouldn't break your optics plate. Alright, sorry for the brief interruption here, but a part I swear I filmed but am not finding somehow and looking through the files is an important detail about what makes these things, one of the things that makes them different. You can't feel it like I can, but you might see that this color is a little bit different. It's kind of this interesting grayish color. This is not a coating, this is a treatment. First off, KOR AHS uses 4340 steel, not 4140, for the barrel slide and the extractor / loaded chamber indicator. That steel is more corrosion resistant and wear resistant than standard 4140, which is what most other handgun makers use. Is it overkill? Probably, but is this a tougher gun? Yes. Additionally, part of that coloring and feel difference on here is that rather than a coating added to the metal, they're using an oxidation process and a nitriding process after that to change the surface of the metal. So if you've ever looked into nitriding, it is a true treatment to the metal itself. It is not a coating that goes on top of it, which means the dimensions are not impacted like they are when you say put Cerakote or paint or any of those other coatings on top of it. So that means they can machine these more precisely and keep them closer to those specs. It also means that that finish is not coming off unless parts of the metal is removed. You notice these laser marks for the import and serial are a bit deeper than you would normally find, and that's because that's what it takes to make them clear after clearly legible after those treatings have been done. Same thing like melaniting an AR barrel. Part of why that's so great is it doesn't wear off unless the metal wears off. That's what KOR is doing to their slides, barrels, and other parts. I will toss in one caveat on that whole slide weight thing, though, before we get too much into this. The only time when a heavy slide can be positive is when it's heavy enough to the point that the slide is not slamming to the rear when it reciprocates. But that's a whole nother tangent. I'm curious to hear your theories on it. These are just my observations after reviewing about 500 handguns. Alright, now that we've got all that out of the way, let's take a look at our fit finish features, starting off as always with magazine release or ejection. And you can see we've got a little bit of hop there. It's taken, so we do have some ejection. These are METGAR mags and witness windowed on the right side. The fun thing with CZ75 mags, even from METGAR, is there are so many different models they've done in the last however many decades they've been making those mags that you can get these in a variety of sizes and availabilities. So it's kind of fun. Alright, starting up front, slide to frame fit, we have a little bit of play. That doesn't matter. A lot of people are concerned about that and they want to inspect those things. As far as accuracy is concerned, that all comes down to your barrel lockup, how firmly the barrel is locked into the slide. If the slide is adjusting tiny insignificant amounts, From slide to frame fit, 1, you probably won't notice with the naked eye while shooting. 2, your sights are moving with it, so it really doesn't matter. And 3, that space is some of what allows debris to clear and the gun to run when not in perfect conditions. I like this kind of beak cut. It's neat to see that catching on. I don't know why, it's just a personal preference. I think it's neat looking. We have some rail space underneath. Out front, those rails do look a little bit on the shallow side. Let me grab something and see how it mounts up. The first thing I was able to grab was this Olight Balder. This is one of those light laser combo deals, but it mounts fine. A little bit of wiggle. That could be Olight specs, not the gun specs, but you'll have to check. All of my other lights were for micro guns, which seems kind of silly, or I've got an older Crimson Trace here, but this requires a screw, quite a bit of fussing to get it on there. Front of the trigger guard, we have some texturing as well as a little bit of a point for the folks that like to run a finger forward there. Trigger guard, a little bit of an edge, but not Glock bad. Pretty nicely done. You can see the magazine release sits rather flush, and I believe it's reversible, and of course CZ75 mags are cut on both sides, so you can use them from either side. Texturing on the front strap is nice. This grid system, most importantly, has horizontal lines which will help with the rotational effort of the gun under recoil. Texturing on the side here looks a little bit deeper than it did on my older one. I don't think it necessarily is. It's probably just the color causing that, allowing us a little more shadow. You can see that we have some contour down here at the base of the stock, as well as a little bit of toe to help keep the hand out of the way for mags. And that contour there allows you to grab the base plate of the magazine, should you not be familiar with how to clear a Type 3 malfunction. Backstrap is driven out with that pin there. YouTube doesn't let me show you how to do that, but rest assured, before we shoot this, we will figure out that which of the 3 backstraps works best between Tia and I. We've got nice contours and rounding up in this corner here to sit comfortably in the hand. Coming around the back, slide to frame fit is very tight. You can see our striker indicator there, and then there's that sight picture following the Glock pattern. Glock pattern sights, good idea. The Glock U and dot, not necessarily what everybody loves, but like I said, you can buy, heck, Glock pattern night sights for dirt cheap these days. Anyways, we do have a manual safety. I know some folks are afraid of manual safeties and the extra step in training that requires, or they're afraid of it being bumped. I'm sure you can hear by the click here that this is definitely a positive clicking safety, and if you don't like it, it sits flush enough that you can just not use it. You can see how flush it sits with the rest of the gun. Just don't use it, and you can rely on the striker or the trigger safety if that's what you're happy with. Since we're here, we'll do a little bit of trigger talk. Very light take up to a wall, little grit and break. Moderate reset. I didn't feel it in my finger, definitely heard it, but it's pretty good. I would say it's like a mid-level hammer fire, as in not a super refined, super fancy, high dollar 2011 type thing, but a mid-level hammer fired gun. And if you're just going to be rapidly pulling to the wall break, there's none of that grit at all, so that's pretty nice as well. Coming on the right side of the gun, we do have our safety. The magazine release, as I said, appears to be reversible. Could be, but I know a lot of left-handed shooters just shift and use their middle finger or the trigger finger to push from that side anyways. Next, we'll field strip the FX-9 RP and take a look inside the gun. To field strip the FX-9 RP is, I think, one of the safer setups out there, because of course the first step is always to check if the gun is clear, right? Locking the slide to the rear is the first step anyways. So we can see it's clear. We're going to rotate this lever down, then release the slide, release the striker, which is pulling the trigger, and the slide will come off the front. Now that we've got the frame exposed, you can see some of that nice beefy steel that they use. I remember from the original that this thing is just built like a tank. Very high quality build, very nice feel on the stuff as far as the way the gun runs, even with just the slight factory, little bit of soot, a little bit of oil that's on it. It still racks very smoothly, and I think a part of that is using that higher grade steel and the treatments they do to the steel. To get our slide apart, I'm going to remove the recoil assembly. Notice it is a dual spring assembly. I like these because they tend to recoil softer, as well as be easier to rack because you get a little bit of momentum going on the easy spring before the firm spring starts to really catch on. Unlock the barrel, Browning action, tap it down forward a little bit so it can tilt, and bring it up the back. And we can take a look inside of our slide. You can see that we do have a drop safety there. Exposed extractor, which doubles as a loaded chamber indicator. There is a little bit of paint, if I can get it with my finger, red there to serve as a loaded chamber indicator. Everything, wow, it looks like brand new tooling. This is like flawless metal in here, which is pretty cool, especially because we know it's not a brand new company. And next we'll take a look at our barrel, grab a round for chamber fit. And with chamber fitment, I'll be using Liberty Ammunition Civil Defense. It's nickel plating here. It helps with corrosion resistance as well as reducing friction. I'm going to drop around in the chamber, and I can see there's a little bit of dirt in there from test fire, but it should be okay. Nice plunk. Make sure that it can rotate freely, and it can. And then we're looking to see how much of the brass is exposed, or if there's any exposed beyond that shoulder. And you can see that we have a very fully supported chamber. There is no question about it. If it's past that fold, it is down in the barrel. That is excellent for safety. It's also excellent for helping ensure consistent combustion, because you don't have brass being tempted to blow out or bulge in one direction or another, because it's fully supported, so all the force is going to be going out the barrel. Also great for reloaders. Now, as I reassemble this gun, I'll tell you what you'll see in the range video. We do absolute first shots, cold shots, no warm-ups, no practices. We don't do highlight reels or any of that BS. We show you the real first shots because those first impressions are sometimes some of the most important ones. And what I found to be very interesting is sometimes by the end of the video, those impressions have changed as we've come to learn the gun. We'll do a full magazine +1, see how the gun runs fully stuffed. Now, CZ75 mags have been tested and proven for decades, but how does this gun work with it? We'll find out. We'll take it over to our trademark What's for Dinner test, see if the gun will eat by adding 10 additional loads to what we were already shooting for the range, including a variety of projectiles and case materials. Also looking to see if there's any noticeable point of impact shifts with this particular gun. Then take it over to the spinner for sights and trigger control to see how that runs. These triggers I like. I shouldn't have a problem with the Glock style sights. That will be interesting to see how it goes. I'm sure we'll do just fine. Then practical accuracy is 5 shots from 7 yards. It's also where I collect up my thoughts. And then the after shots will be concluding thoughts after having spent the day with the gun. I believe Miss Tia should be able to join us for this one, so that'll be interesting. And we will bring along the older one for comparison notes, because it has been a few years. But these are very affordable guns that, in my opinion, are quite capable. It might be, no, it's not too large. It's on the larger side because you've got a 17 round magazine as far as carry, but for duty use, home defense use, range fun, or learning to shoot, I recommend guns of this size bracket anyways, these being affordable and made well beyond the specs of some of the most popular chosen firearms. I think they're pretty cool. Haven't shot this one yet. We'll find out when we get to the range. I'll see you guys there, and thanks for watching.